Let's talk 28 Days Later today. A film that I feel not only revived the post-apocalyptic zombie subgenre in the early 2000s, but a film that really helped redefine that genre. It's kind of crazy to think about just how influential this film has been in pop culture. Coming back and rewatching it, I've kind of been obsessed with this film over the last couple of weeks and just like how much it genuinely creeped me out. And today's video is going to talk about why. I'm going to be breaking it down 5 reasons why I think this film works so well. Before moving ahead, just know that this will be a spoiler video, going to be getting into specifics about the film, so if you haven't seen it, you definitely should. It was also really eerie to be watching this film in a post-2020 world and post-lockdown world. There's a lot here that I feel like Garland and Danny Boyle predicted. So let's talk about the first reason, which is just the monsters themselves and just the actual horror aspect of the movie. The first reason why I think this film works so well is that it does not do what we see in a lot of films today, which is rely on cheap scares, particularly in the form of something like a jump scare. It's a film that creates dread through stillness and then sudden action. I think Danny Boyle and Garland here are very smart in the way that they're structuring the film, in that it does give you a little bit of levity, it does give you a little bit of time to understand the characters, and then when the rage monsters do appear, it comes at these moments where you are realizing it at the exact same time that the characters are. It's not what we see today where it's like, okay, cheap jump scare and we're gonna have all of this build up, the characters creeping along or doing something slow and you're just like waiting for it. Whereas here when the zombie comes, like a lot of times they're just there. Like the one thing that comes to mind is where Cillian Murphy is in his childhood home and he's just standing in the kitchen, and then there's this rage monster that just crashes through the window. But moments like that in the film, I felt like worked really well. In reality, if a monster is coming at you, it's gonna happen and you're probably not gonna realize it or be prepared for it. That's what's terrifying. And I feel like Danny Boyle is really able to get at that specific feeling. Also in the fact that the monsters are very fast. This is the film that introduced us to the running zombie. That's terrifying. And that brings me to my second point that I want to talk about with the monsters. And I'm calling them zombies in this video just really more for ease, even though they're technically like not really zombies, at least in the way that we tend to think about them within pop culture. They're not necessarily these walking corpses. In some ways, they're still alive, they're still human, they still have a human quality to them. They're just completely consumed by unfiltered anger and just want to rip apart anyone or anything that is in their way. And I think that's like what makes them scarier than just your usual like shambling corpse. I think the monsters in this film just get at a deeper base level of humanity and the human psyche. It's this base human emotion of rage that is let loose without any moral compass. And there's something about that, especially watching this film again post 2020 and how we saw people behaving during lockdowns, that feels very real and feels like something that we in some ways are still dealing with today. Like I was talking about these movies with a friend of mine and I was like, this is just how people are behaving like right now. Like we don't even need like a specific virus to make people fly off the handle or make people act violently. So I think that's why I find these monsters so fascinating, is that in some ways they do feel very real, even though they are obviously very exaggerated. I think this film in particular is really interested in exploring those base human needs and desires. Whereas I feel like other TV and films within the subgenre do tend to get caught up in like the gore and the abjectness of it and not giving the monster a human type quality that we see here. And I think having that human type quality is what makes it feel more threatening than just a kind of typical supernatural monster. Okay, so let's move on to the second reason of why this film works so well. And a lot of that has to do with just the visuals and the location. Just that first part of the film where Cillian Murphy is waking up and that whole iconic moment of him going out into the deserted London streets and there is nobody there. And there's something about that is very much giving like liminal spaces. This is another conversation that I was having with a friend the other day of like, why are we so fascinated by the liminal space? And yes, I think there's something about seeing a location that we instinctively know should have some kind of life to it, right? Like, yes, you're on the streets of London. There should be people there. It should be loud. It should be noisy. It should be alive, and it's not. And I think it's like that disconnect. It's almost like an uncanny valley type phenomenon that creeps under our skin. And I feel like the first part of this film does that so well. And I feel like, again, when we're thinking about our base human psychology, the idea of nothing, the idea of being nothing is very disturbing for us as beings of consciousness. And I love the way that he's using the camera to get those feelings across. Again, just those like wide angle shots of the city. This film is known for having that very grainy feel to it, right? There's something about it that just feels very like grimy, while also taking a very realistic approach and having that kind of documentary feel. Not so much in a found footage way, although you can definitely feel the influence of that in certain parts of this film. And there is an intimacy with the camera as well. Obviously a lot of close-ups, especially during those shots when the zombie attacks are happening. One of my other favorite scenes is when Cillian Murphy and Naomi Harris character discover Brendan Gleeson and his daughter, and he invites them into his house, and there's like Christmas lights and there's Christmas music playing, and it feels very cozy. It's like trying to create this sense of normalcy within everything that's happened. And again, I think hinting at this overall theme of trying to create meaning in life and trying to create something to live for. I just like how Danny Boyle is visually showing us how these characters are still trying to create some sense of routine. And that goes into reason number 3 as to why I think this film works so well, and that is the characters and the performances. So obviously this is a fantastic cast. You get young Cillian Murphy at the start of his career, and I really love the arc of his character as someone that is starting off very vulnerable, as someone that is starting off as kind of passive and not really understanding like what's happening, as someone who starts off losing his family at the beginning, and then we see this change in his character where he does become a little bit more hardened, he does take a little bit more action, but his reasonings for doing that is because of this new family system that he has created. Starts with absolutely nothing and then rediscovers something, right? Regains something over the course of the story. I absolutely love Naomi Harris in this film. I love that scene when they are in Cillian Murphy's house and the rage monsters attack, and the one other guy that they're with at the beginning of the film gets bitten, and she just like straight up kills him. Doesn't even think twice about it, just takes him out immediately. And I was like, she's so cool. And I feel like you just genuinely care for them as characters. Like, they don't feel like the stereotypical archetypes. The relationship between Brendan Gleeson and his daughter is very sweet and very beautiful, and it feels tragic when he dies, especially since the film has done such a good job of setting up the whole reason why this father and daughter have been able to survive as long as they have is because they have each other, right? There is something for them to be fighting for, and giving them this like complicated psychology. Like, even if we think about Christopher Eccleston's character, right, the general, even him as a character, like, he's definitely supposed to be the standard human, non-infected antagonist. And what I found so fascinating was his whole speech to Cillian Murphy's character of like, look, yes, I sent out this message here. Yes, it's bullshit. Yes, we don't have like a cure, but the real cure, at least for my men, is for them to have some kind of human connection. He was getting ready to watch his men essentially give up on life, essentially get ready to take their own lives. And so out of desperation, he was like, yeah, I just put out this message in the hopes that specifically women would come and I could give them to my men, and then they can like have a relationship and have a family and have life give meaning again.
We fight off the infected, or we wait until they starve to death, and then what? What do 9 men do except wait to die themselves?
And obviously that in itself is very creepy and horrifying. Like, it's definitely giving The Handmaid's Tale type vibes, and not condoning this line of thinking at all. Yet the way that he's delivering it, the way that Danny Boyle and Alex Garland are setting up these characters and their psychology, and again having this theme tying in around how do we make meaning in a world that has completely fallen apart. Where does our sense of hope come from? It comes from other people. It comes from human connection. And so when thinking about it through that lens, it's like I can see where Christopher Eccleston's character is coming from. Again, not condoning it. While the general is definitely a bad guy here, his motivations are coming from a place of him trying to protect his men, and probably trying to come from a place of his own self-preservation of like, if I lose my men and I don't have people to lead, then what am I gonna live for? So I think all these characters have really interesting psychologies, and again, they just make you care for them. And I keep bringing that up because I am always surprised at the amount of times that I go to the theater to watch a movie and I just do not care about any of the characters that are on screen. And I think it's because there's a tendency, especially in mainstream Hollywood films, to lean more into the archetypes rather than creating these very complex characters that live in the shades of gray. And I also think what adds to the human quality of these characters, which is also my fourth reason why I think this movie works so well, is the use of humor. Like, there's actually some pretty, dark, bleak humor throughout the movie.
You stoned?
It's a long story.
Yes, it's dealing with this very dreadful idea, and yes, the themes are very heavy, but at least Alex Garland and Danny Boyle are giving you these moments of levity throughout the film. The scene that comes to mind is when Cillian Murphy is in the church, and there's the priest that has been turned into one of the rage monsters, and Cillian Murphy throws something at the priest, or he does something, and then that causes the priest to get really angry and go after him. And Cillian Murphy's character is just like, oh, shouldn't have done that.
Oh, shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have done that.
And I feel like the relationship between humor and horror is so interesting. And I'm not necessarily talking about horror comedies that do tend to lean more into the comedic bits. Just like how having little bits of levity here and there can actually add to the more horrific scenes that are happening. And I feel like George Romero did this in his films as well, when you're having moments where the characters can let loose a little bit, or there can be a little bit of humor, there can be a little bit of joy coming in, and then when that horror comes in again, I don't know, it just feels more impactful, right? Because you got to have a sense of what this world was like without that horror coming in. I don't know if that makes sense. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I feel like the horror parts hit harder when we're able to take a bit of a break from it and also get to see different sides of the characters. One of my favorite scenes in this film is when they stumble on the grocery store and they're like, let's go shopping. And then you just get that whole montage of them looking for food and they're finding their favorite foods, and Brendan Gleeson is given a lesson on liquor.
Now, single malt, 16-year-old, tart, full flavour, warmer, not aggressive. Peachy aftertaste.
It's fun, it's a cute moment. It allows you as the audience to enjoy the characters, which makes you care about them even more. Also, I feel like that scene was a very nice nod and wink to Dawn of the Dead. And I think having humor also adds to this theme, which I've been talking about throughout this video, and is the fifth reason why I think this film works so well, and really the main reason why I feel like this film works so well, and that is this theme of finding hope, finding connection, finding love, the question about how do you rebuild society after something like this happens. And again, I just feel like this is a film that is really touching on these base human feelings and needs and desires, and I think it's that reason why it stands the test of time. I feel like Alex Garland as a scriptwriter just had a very clear idea of what he was trying to communicate with this story. And again, as I've pointed out, you see it in every single aspect of this film and in the characters. Whereas the rage monsters kind of representing the worst aspects of humanity. That's the interesting thing, is that this is a film about a virus, but the actual virus aspect of it isn't really the main focus. Yes, that's how it spreads from person to person, but the focus is on the behavior. And again, we see that represented within the family aspects of the film, both the biological family as well as the chosen family. The soldiers that are also craving connection, but are doing it in this very twisted way. This overall theme is in every single aspect of this narrative, and that is what makes it strong and stand out from a lot of other films, because a lot of other films, they just don't have that. They have an idea of maybe what they're trying to say, but it's just not there in the characters, it's not there in the character motives, or it just gets very convoluted and kind of lost. And again, it's such a eerie film to kind of watch after everything that we went through in 2020, because we did see both sides of this acting out. We saw how leaning into fear often led to to anger, distrust for others, right? And definitely seeing this othering happening. While at the same time, we also saw this other side to it where we saw the unique ways that people tried to maintain connection and tried to maintain their daily rituals. And I think 28 Days Later taps into this same tension. It's not just about survival, it's about the psychological cost of crisis and how people choose to deal with that crisis. And overall, it's just a study in how fragile, but also how vital our need for connection really is. What I do really love about this film is that it does end on a message of hope. Yes, I know we have the sequels, we'll talk about that in a second. But if we're just taking this film as a standalone, as it on its own, I just really love that Danny Boyle and Alex Garland didn't give us a clear answer as to what was happening, but allowed us to leave the film with some sense of hope and with some sense of goodness. I just really think that ties up the overall messaging in a nice way. Okay, so let's just quickly talk about 28 Weeks Later, which I did also revisit. All I will say about it is that as far as sequels go, like, it's okay. It's not the worst sequel that I've ever seen. I love that opening sequence with them in the house, and you have that husband and wife, and the husband just like leaves his wife for the monsters to attack. Like, what an asshole. It's a fun story. It's definitely more action oriented. I just feel like overall it lacks a lot of the depth and a lot of the finesse that the first film had. I feel like there was a lot of reliance on just certain stylistic techniques. There's a lot of those like slow-mo shots that you see happening. So those are my reasons why I think 28 Days Later still holds up as one of the greatest horror films of all time. I had such a fun time revisiting it. I've had such a fun time thinking about it. I am now more hyped than ever for 28 Years Later. I'm so excited that Alex Garland and Danny Boyle are coming back for this one. And I'm very curious what angle they're going to take with it. Until then, let me know your thoughts on 28 Days Later. Is this a film that still holds up for you? Why or why not? And I will see you next week to talk about 28 Years Later. So until then, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. I would do so bad in a zombie apocalypse like this because I am not a good runner. I have bad knees. I would like die so quickly, and I would be okay with it. If this happened in real life, I'd be like, I'm out. For anyone that's read World War Z and how they talk about like certain people who couldn't handle the breakdown of society and just willingly let themselves become zombies, like they just willingly let the zombies bite them so they wouldn't have to like deal with it, like that would be me.